The Throne of Heroes meets the legacy of the Uzumaki once more. You aren't just watching a story about a shinobi, you're witnessing the rise of a king. I'm Six Path Weeb, and today we're diving back into the treasury. In part 1, we saw the golden ripples of the Gate of Babylon begin to reshape the elemental nations. Now, the weight of the crown and the power of the EA are about to change the game entirely. Today's fanfic concept. What if Naruko was the reincarnation of Gilgamesh? Part 2. Greater than disclaimer, this content is created for entertainment and discussion purposes only. I do not own any anime footage or source material used in this video. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Greater than. The stage is set, the arrogance is earned, and the Enuma Elish is ready to be unleashed. Now, let's begin. Jutsu. Deep within a quiet, glowing space sealed by ancient magic, a great fox spirit rested peacefully. This was the wise and powerful Kyuubi, a being made of shimmering chakra. For many days, she had been watching over a new presence inside the seal. The new arrival was a calm, silver-haired spirit who sat quietly with her eyes closed. She did not cause trouble, but the Kyuubi remained attentive. It was not out of fear, but out of responsibility. This space was important, it protected someone very special. You are quite careful, the silver-haired spirit said gently, opening her eyes. Watching over me so closely. The Kyuubi's voice was steady but not unkind. I am simply doing what is needed. This place must remain safe. The silver-haired spirit smiled faintly. You believe the one outside will grow strong enough to guide us both, don't you? Yes, the Kyuubi replied. She already is. Outside the seal, that very girl, Naruko, walked along a peaceful forest path with her teammates after completing an important mission. The air was fresh, and sunlight danced between the leaves. The journey had changed many things, especially for Naruko. She noticed small differences in herself. She felt lighter on her feet, quicker, and more aware of the world around her. Her bright hair seemed softer, her eyes a little more radiant, as if they held a quiet glow. Naruko paused by a stream and looked at her reflection. She murmured, tilting her head. I look a bit different. She wasn't scared, just curious. Inside her mind, a familiar voice spoke. You've noticed, said Gilgamesh, the ancient spirit who guided her. Yeah, Naruko replied. Is it okay? It is more than okay, Gilgamesh answered calmly. You are growing. The energies within you are blending in harmony. Naruko sat on a rock, thinking. So I'm not losing myself? No, he said. You are becoming more yourself. Naruko smiled at that. I want to keep getting stronger, she said. Not just for me, but for everyone. There was a quiet pause. I know, Gilgamesh replied. Naruko stood up, her confidence returning like sunlight after clouds. Then let's keep going, she said cheerfully, turning back toward her friends. As she ran ahead, her laughter echoed through the trees, bright, hopeful, and full of life. And deep within, both the Kyuubi and the silver-haired spirit listened quietly, knowing that Naruko's heart would guide the path forward. The spirit let out a quiet sigh. I really must learn to be more careful with what I say, it thought. Konoha finally came into view for Team 7. The tall village walls and the slightly open gates felt like a warm welcome after their long journey. As soon as they spotted the guards waving, all three genin relaxed at once. They were finally home. All right, you three go get some rest. You've earned it, Kakashi said in his usual calm tone. I'll report to the Hokage. Yes, Kakashi-sensei, they replied together. In a blur, Kakashi disappeared, leaving the three teammates standing at the entrance. Sasuke turned and began heading toward his home, eager for quiet and rest. Before he could get far, Sakura hurried to his side. Hey, Sasuke-kun. Would you like to get something to eat? She asked hopefully. He glanced at her briefly, then continued walking. No, thank you. Sakura watched him go, her shoulders drooping slightly. He never eats with me, she murmured. A light tap on her shoulder made her turn. Bright blue eyes met hers, full of energy and warmth. Hey, Sakura-chan. Wanna grab something to eat? Naruko asked, smiling and scratching the back of her head. Sakura looked her up and down. Naruko had grown taller recently, and her old orange outfit no longer fit. Now she wore black pants and a soft gray shirt they had found during their mission. It was simple, but it suited her well. Sakura hesitated for a moment. She hadn't planned on spending time like this, but Naruko's hopeful expression was hard to refuse. All right, she said. Where do you want to go? Where else? Ichiraku's. Naruko replied brightly. The two made their way to the familiar ramen shop. Taking seats side by side, they began chatting. At first, Sakura expected the conversation to feel the same as always, but something was different. Naruko still spoke with enthusiasm, still added her cheerful believe it at the end of sentences, but instead of finding it annoying, Sakura found herself smiling. Naruko's excitement was genuine, and her stories were full of heart. Sakura realized, a little surprised, that she had never truly taken the time to understand her teammate before. She had simply followed what others thought. But now, sitting here, she saw Naruko differently, kind, determined, and full of life. After a few minutes, Ayame came to take their order. Hello, what can Naruko? She said, blinking in surprise. Ayame. My first big mission was a success, Naruko said proudly. Ayame smiled warmly. That's wonderful. You look different somehow. Taller, maybe? Naruko laughed nervously. Yeah, I guess I've been growing a bit. Well, it suits you, Ayame said kindly. What would you like to eat? They placed their orders, and soon their bowls arrived. The meal was warm and comforting, and their conversation flowed easily. By the time they finished, the sun had already begun to lower in the sky. See you later, Sakura-chan. Naruko called, waving as she headed off. Goodbye, Naruko. See you. Sakura replied, waving back with more enthusiasm than she expected. As Naruko disappeared down the street, Sakura lowered her hand and smiled to herself. I should have gotten to know her sooner, she thought. But it's not too late. She walked home feeling lighter, happy about the bond that was beginning to grow. Naruko felt cheerful as she made her way home. Spending time with Sakura had meant a lot to her. She replayed their conversation in her mind, smiling as she walked. But something felt different. Some villagers still kept their distance, as they always had. Naruko was used to that. But today, others, especially people her age, were looking at her with curiosity instead of avoidance. Some whispered softly to each other. Others smiled shyly before quickly looking away. Naruko blinked in confusion. Did I forget something? She wondered, checking her clothes and face. Everything seemed normal. High above, unseen by others, the spirit within her watched with quiet amusement. She truly does not notice, it thought gently. Feeling a little overwhelmed, Naruko hopped up onto the rooftops, where the air was clearer and quieter. Moving swiftly, she made her way home. Just as she stepped inside and set her things down, a masked Onbu appeared. The Hokage requests to see you, the figure said. Naruko nodded with a smile. She had been hoping to share her story with him anyway. Inside the Hokage's office, Kakashi had just finished explaining the mission. The Hokage listened carefully, taking everything in. After a moment, he spoke. Please ask Naruko to come in. A soft knock followed shortly after. Come in, Naruko, the Hokage said warmly. Naruko walked in casually with her hands linked behind her head. Hey, Gigi. I heard you wanted to see me. Lord Sarutobi tilted his head as he studied the young Jinan. Kakashi was right. She does seem a little different, he thought, though his expression stayed warm. Congratulations on your first successful A-ranked mission. I'm very proud of you. Naruko's face brightened instantly. Thanks, old man. It was really tough, but nothing I couldn't handle, she said with cheerful confidence. That's wonderful to hear, the Hokage replied kindly. You're growing into a fine ninja. This mission showed that clearly. Naruko gave a small, slightly nervous laugh. Oh. Thanks. The Hokage set his pipe aside and leaned forward. About this last mission, he began gently, I was hoping you could help fill in a few details. Naruko looked down, fidgeting with her fingers. Details like what? He smiled reassuringly. I think you already know what I mean. There's nothing to worry about. It will be all right. Naruko met his eyes and saw only patience and trust. Okay, she said softly. For the next while, Naruko carefully explained everything she had experienced, every unusual detail and strange feeling. Kakashi and the Hokage listened closely, rarely interrupting. By the end, they exchanged thoughtful glances. Though the situation was unusual, they both trusted Naruko and believed in her strength. Thank you, Naruko, the Hokage said at last. That was very interesting. Naruko crossed her arms lightly. You don't believe me, do you? The Hokage chuckled. On the contrary, I believe every word. It's just something I've never encountered before. Naruko sighed. So, am I going to be restricted? No, he replied warmly. We'll simply keep an eye on things. If anything feels wrong, you must tell us. Agreed? Naruko's eyes widened with relief. Of course, Gigi. Good. Now go get some rest. You've earned it. See you later. She called as she hurried out of the room. When she was gone, Kakashi turned to the Hokage. We're just going to observe? Sarutobi nodded calmly. For now, yes. I trust her. And there isn't much else we can do except guide her if needed. Kakashi sighed, folding his arms. She's stronger than I realized. They all are, the Hokage said gently. After a moment, he added, the Chunin exams are coming soon. Kakashi glanced toward the window. Yeah. I know. Later, Sakura returned home and went straight to bed, completely worn out from the recent mission. She hoped for a long, peaceful rest, but her plans didn't quite work out. Hey, forehead. A familiar voice broke through her sleep. Sakura felt a light nudge. Wake up already. Her eyes slowly opened to see bright blue eyes looking down at her. Ino? Finally. It's already morning, Ino said, crossing her arms. Sakura groaned and sat up. What are you doing here? I came to talk, Ino said, sitting at the edge of the bed. And don't worry, I come in peace. Sakura narrowed her eyes. What do you want? Ino smiled. You can have Sasuke. Sakura blinked in surprise. What? This is a trick, isn't it? It's not a trick, Ino said quickly. I've started noticing someone else. Sakura raised an eyebrow. You don't even know who it is? Not really, Ino admitted with a small laugh. But there's something about him. I just want to figure it out. Sakura hesitated, then sighed. And what does this have to do with me? Ino's expression softened. I miss being your friend. We used to be so close. Sakura looked away, thinking. They had spent so long arguing that it felt strange to even consider going back. Fine, Sakura said at last, though a small smile tugged at her lips. Tell me about him. Ino's face lit up. Thank you, Sakura. She gave her a quick hug. I saw him yesterday on the rooftops. He moved so fast, I could barely keep up. Sakura leaned forward, now curious despite herself. All right, now you have to tell me everything. The two girls sat together, talking and laughing, their friendship slowly finding its way back, just like it used to be. Okay, Ino began, clasping her hands together with a dreamy sigh, she's definitely a ninja. Normal people don't go hopping from rooftop to rooftop like that. So that narrows it down a lot. Sakura tilted her head, listening carefully. She was wearing black pants and sturdy boots, with a fitted gray shirt, Ino continued. She looked kind of lean, but really strong too. Like she could carry a whole stack of scrolls without breaking a sweat. Black pants and a gray shirt. That's pretty common, Sakura thought. Lots of ninja dress like that. Oh. And she has pale blonde hair. Sakura's eyes widened slightly. That sounds familiar. And the best part, Ino said, her voice softening, her eyes. They were so bright and blue. Almost like they were glowing. I couldn't stop looking at them. Sakura sat up straighter. Wait. Ino blinked. Sakura clutched her blanket. I think I know who it is. Ino leaned forward eagerly. Really? Who? Sakura sighed. It's Naruko Uzumaki. Ino blinked once. Twice. And then laughed. Very funny. I thought you were serious. I am serious, Sakura replied. How many blonde ninja with bright blue eyes do you know? Ino hesitated. But. She didn't really look like Naruko. She's grown a bit recently, Sakura said quietly. Ino leaned back, stunned for a moment. And then suddenly smiled brightly. She's amazing. Sakura blinked. What? I thought you found her annoying? Ino waved her hand. Annoying? No way. She's funny, energetic, and always does something interesting. Her pranks are actually kind of clever. Sakura looked confused, her expression giving her away. Oh. This makes things easier, Ino said, standing up. She's always at Ichiraku Ramen, right? Yeah. Sakura replied softly. Perfect. I'll just go there and talk to her, Ino said, already planning. Sakura tightened her grip on her blanket without realizing it. Ino? Sakura said. Ino turned. Nothing, Sakura muttered. Ino narrowed her eyes slightly, then leaned closer. You like her too, don't you? Sakura jumped. No way. Ino smiled knowingly. Good. Because I'm going to go talk to her. Sakura frowned. Ino crossed her arms playfully. Then what was that little sound just now? I didn't make any sound, Sakura insisted. Ino grinned. Let's test that. She cleared her throat. Naruko and Sakura went to the park. Sakura raised an eyebrow. And Naruko brought someone else with her. Sakura stiffened slightly. Ino smirked. Got it. Sakura quickly shook her head. No. She's just my teammate. I worry about her, that's all. Sure, Ino said lightly, heading toward the window. I'm going to find her. See you later. With that, she hopped out. Sakura stared at the floor. Why does that bother me? Dash. A few hours later, soft tapping came from Sakura's window. She stretched and checked the time. Noon. Pulling the curtains aside, she expected to see Ino again. Instead, she found herself face to face with Naruko Uzumaki. Hey, Sakura-chan, Naruko said cheerfully. Can I come in? I brought food. Sakura sighed at her enthusiasm but stepped aside. Fine. But don't touch anything. Naruko climbed in and looked around. Wow. You really like pink. I do, Sakura said firmly. Naruko laughed. It's nice. Just. Very pink. Sakura crossed her arms, but a small smile slipped through. Naruko handed her a bag. I got your favorite. Sakura peeked inside, surprised. How did you know? Naruko shrugged. I pay attention. They sat together on the floor, eating quietly. After a moment, Sakura noticed a bit of broth on Naruko's cheek and gently wiped it away with a napkin. Naruko blinked, surprised, then smiled softly. Thanks, she said. Sakura quickly looked away, feeling her cheeks warm. Are you okay? Naruko asked. You look a little red. I'm fine, Sakura said quickly. Naruko tilted her head. That's funny. A lot of people look like that today. Even Ino. Sakura froze. You saw Ino? Yeah, Naruko said. She seemed nervous for some reason. Sakura looked down, thinking. Naruko smiled. Everyone's acting kind of funny today. Sakura couldn't help but smile a little too. Maybe, she said softly, it's just one of those days. She kept scooting closer to me, Naruko said, puffing her cheeks a little. I moved away, but every time I did, she just moved closer again. Sakura tilted her head, trying not to smile too much. Naruko looked so serious, yet something about the situation felt a little funny. I know she doesn't like me, Naruko continued, but trying to make me sick would just be mean. She crossed her arms, clearly puzzled. And I don't think Ayame-chan should be making food if she isn't feeling well. But she said she was fine, and I really wanted ramen, so I didn't argue. Sakura blinked. How does she not understand what's going on? She wondered. Still, she shook her head lightly. Don't worry about Ino. I'll talk to her, she said, trying to sound calm. Naruko scratched the back of her head with a sheepish grin. Thanks, Sakura-chan. But I think it's okay. I never get sick anyway. Sakura sighed softly but gave a small nod. Fine. Thanks. You're the best. Naruko beamed before happily returning to her bowl of ramen. Sakura looked down at her own plate, lost in thought. After a moment, she spoke again. Hey, Naruko? Yeah? Naruko replied, making sure she wasn't talking with her mouth full this time. How did you know this is my favorite place to eat? Naruko carefully set her bowl down before answering. A few years ago, in Iruka-sensei's class, you mentioned it. I was sitting nearby and heard you. Oh. Sakura's voice softened. She hadn't even realized Naruko had been paying attention back then. You also talked about your favorite foods, Naruko added with a cheerful smile. So I remembered. Sakura looked at her in surprise. You remembered all that from one conversation? Of course, Naruko said brightly. I wanted to be ready for the day you'd say yes to going out with me. Sakura lightly tapped her on the head. You really don't give up, do you? Naruko just laughed. Nope. For a brief moment, they looked at each other, and everything felt quiet and still. Sakura quickly turned her head, feeling her cheeks grow warm. "You're impossible," she muttered, though there was no real annoyance in her voice. Naruko stood up and picked up her bowl. "I should get going. I just wanted to check on you, you seemed tired yesterday." Sakura hesitated, as if she wanted to say something more, but instead she just nodded. "See you later, Sakura-chan," Naruko said with a wave before heading out. Sakura watched her leave, her thoughts swirling. "She really is something," she murmured. Suddenly, a quiet voice spoke from behind her. "Excuse me." Sakura turned to see a masked messenger standing politely by the window. "The Hokage would like to see you." Sakura nodded, and the messenger disappeared just as quietly as they had arrived. "I guess I should go," she said to herself, getting ready quickly. Elsewhere, Ino paced back and forth in her room. "Why did I act like that?" she groaned, covering her face. She had gone to talk to Naruko earlier, but instead of saying anything clearly, she had stumbled over her words. "And she kept moving away from me," Ino added, sighing. "Does she really think I was trying to make her sick?" After a moment, she took a deep breath and straightened up. "Okay. That didn't go well. I just need a better plan." Just as she reached for the door, she paused in surprise. A messenger stood waiting outside. "Oh. I guess something important is happening," she said, quickly following along. Soon, Sakura arrived at the Hokage's office and knocked politely. "Come in," came the reply. Inside, the Hokage greeted her kindly. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We'll wait for the others before explaining." Sakura nodded, guessing it must be a mission. A moment later, there was another knock. "Enter." Ino walked in, looking just as curious. "Forehead, what are you doing here?" she asked. "I could ask you the same," Sakura replied with a small smile. Now, the Hokage chuckled. "You'll be working together on this mission." "Together?" they both asked in surprise. "Yes. And there will be a third teammate joining you." Before they could ask more, the doors opened again. "Hey! You called for me?" Naruko said, stepping in with her usual bright energy. "Oh, Sakura-chan. Ino-chan. You're here too?" Ino smiled and waved. Sakura felt a little relieved seeing Naruko again so soon. "Yes," the Hokage said. "This mission is suited to Naruko's unique abilities, and you two will support her." Naruko looked excited. "A mission? That sounds great." Sakura and Ino exchanged glances, both smiling now. It seemed like this unexpected team might turn into something special after all. The newly formed team of Jinan walked together toward their latest assignment. At the front was Naruto Uzumaki, though now she preferred to be called Naruko. She moved with a bright, determined energy, her golden hair catching the sunlight as she led the way. The Hokage had given them a C-rank mission at Konoha's newly opened bank. The problem sounded simple at first: the vault door would not open. But once they heard the details, Naruko realized it was more serious. The large steel door had jammed shut, and people were stuck safely, but uncomfortably, inside. The seal was so tight that fresh air would not last forever. The mechanics had suggested slow tools, but time mattered. That was where Naruko came in. She stopped at the base of the bank steps, glancing at her teammates, Sakura and Ino. Both walked beside her, unusually close. Naruko scratched the back of her head, puzzled. You two okay?" "We're fine," Sakura said quickly. "Perfectly fine," Ino added, though she gave Sakura a brief sideways look. Naruko blinked. Something felt strange, but she decided not to worry about it. There was a mission to focus on. At the top of the steps, a neatly dressed man greeted them. "Are you the ninja sent to help?" Naruko grinned and gave a confident nod. "That's me. Naruko Uzumaki, your friendly problem solver." The man smiled politely. "Thank you for coming. Please, follow me." Inside, the bank was bright and polished, with smooth floors and quiet voices echoing gently. They walked through a secure hallway until they reached the vault. The door stood tall and unmoving, thick and solid. Naruko stepped closer and gently knocked on it. Tough one," she said thoughtfully, though her smile never faded. She turned to the director. "Can you tell the people inside to step away from the door and cover their ears? I don't want to startle anyone." "Of course," he replied, hurrying off. As they waited, the silence grew a little awkward again. Sakura and Ino stood on either side of Naruko, both watching her closely. Naruko rubbed her hands together. Alright. Let's make this fun. She extended her hand, and with a soft shimmer, her large sword appeared. It gleamed in the light, impressive but not frightening, more like a tool she trusted deeply. Ino's eyes widened. That's quite something. Naruko gave a playful grin. Watch this. She stepped forward and lifted the sword onto her shoulder, then suddenly spoke in a loud, cheerful voice, as if announcing a game. Here she comes. Naruko Uzumaki steps up with confidence. Sakura blinked. What are you doing? Shh, Naruko whispered, still smiling. Just go with it. Ino caught on first, placing a hand near her ear like a commentator. The crowd is watching closely. Will she succeed? Sakura hesitated, then smiled despite herself. All eyes are on Naruko. This could be the moment. Naruko adjusted her stance, focusing carefully. Here we go. She raised the sword, not with force, but with precise control, and gave the door a firm, calculated strike. A deep sound echoed through the room. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a gentle shift, the door loosened. Naruko lowered her sword slowly. Almost there, she said calmly. With one more careful tap, the mechanism released, and the heavy door opened just enough to allow fresh air to flow inside. A soft cheer came from within the vault. The director sighed in relief. You did it. Everyone is safe. Naruko beamed, resting the sword at her side. Of course. That's what we're here for. Sakura crossed her arms, smiling. Not bad. Ino nodded. Not bad at all. Naruko looked at both of them and laughed. Next time, we can skip the awkward walking part, okay? The two girls glanced at each other, then quietly laughed as well. Together, the team stepped back into the sunlight, mission complete, and spirits high. The sound of metal tapping against metal echoed softly as Naruko swung her special tool against the vault door. She focused carefully, making sure each movement was steady and controlled. It's open. The two girls cheered at the same time, clapping their hands in playful celebration. Naruko smiled brightly, lowering her tool and raising her arms in triumph as her teammates applauded her effort. Ino peeked inside the room and blinked in amazement at the open vault. Wow, Naruko. When did you learn to do that? Naruko just grinned, a little proud but trying not to show it too much. Since her part was done, she stepped back and watched Ino and Sakura take care of the rest of the mission. They carefully checked on the clerks who had been stuck inside, making sure everyone was safe and comfortable. Naruko folded her arms behind her head and smiled to herself. At least they're not arguing anymore. It was true, Ino and Sakura weren't just pretending to get along. They were genuinely working together again. Somehow, Naruko's playful energy had helped them realize how silly their disagreement had been. Now they were back to being friends, and it felt right. It didn't take long for the mission to wrap up. The clerks were all fine, and the team's work was done. While waiting, Naruko chatted happily with Kotetsu and Izumo, who had arrived to keep watch until the vault door could be replaced. The bank was being extra careful, and Naruko found it interesting to hear how everything worked behind the scenes. Soon, the three Genin were walking back together, feeling proud of their successful mission. They stopped by the Hokage's office, gave their report, and received their payment. For such a short task, it was surprisingly good, and everyone was in high spirits. Naruko stretched her arms as they walked. She felt restless. The mission had been easy, too easy. She still had plenty of energy left. She glanced at Ino and Sakura, who were chatting happily beside her. Hey, Naruko said, brightening, do you want to train with me? Ino's eyes lit up immediately. Yes. Sakura hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, Naruko. Great. Let's go. Naruko dashed ahead without waiting. Wait up. The two called, hurrying after her. They arrived at Training Ground 7, a familiar place filled with open space and tall trees swaying gently in the breeze. Naruko had been about to suggest a group exercise, but before she could say anything, Ino and Sakura jumped into a friendly sparring match. Their movements were quick but controlled, each trying to outdo the other. Naruko chuckled and sat down nearby. She decided to focus on her own practice. Placing her tool carefully on the ground, she stepped back and concentrated. Come on, she murmured, holding out her hand. She tried to call the tool back to her without touching it. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, it shimmered and began to fade, reappearing in her hand moments later. Naruko's eyes widened. Hey! That worked. Encouraged, She tried again, stepping even farther away this time. Dash. After a while, Ino and Sakura slowed down, both breathing heavily but smiling. You're getting better, Sakura admitted. So are you, Ino replied, brushing her hair back. That was fun. They both paused, then laughed softly. The tension between them had completely disappeared. Naruko noticed and beamed. You two were amazing. She walked over and set down a basket between them. You deserve a break, she said. Food? Sakura asked, surprised. Naruko nodded. I had a shadow clone grab it while you were training. Ino opened one of the containers and blinked. Wait. How did you know I like cherry tomatoes and pudding? Naruko rubbed the back of her neck, smiling shyly. You mentioned it once. A long time ago. Sakura tilted her head. You remember that? Naruko nodded. I remember things. Especially when I'm with you too. Both girls looked at her, surprised. Naruko's cheeks turned pink. I don't know why. It just happens. Ino smiled warmly. I think that's really nice. Sakura crossed her arms, but there was a small smile on her face too. Yeah. It is. The three of them sat together under the gentle sunlight, sharing food and laughter. What had started as a simple mission had turned into something more meaningful, a reminder of friendship, teamwork, and the joy of spending time together. Naruko leaned back, looking up at the sky. Let's train again tomorrow, she said. Ino and Sakura exchanged glances and nodded. Definitely. I remember every moment I've ever spent with you, Naruko said softly, her voice a little unsure. From the first day we met until now. Whenever either of you is nearby. I just can't forget. Sakura and Ino blinked in surprise. They had never thought about it that way. Every second Naruko shared with them lived on clearly in her memory. As they stood there, they realized she was doing it again, quietly noticing everything, their expressions, their words, even the gentle breeze around them. Naruko saw the surprise on their faces and felt her heart tighten. This was why she had been afraid to tell anyone. She worried they might think she was strange. Sakura had figured it out, though, and now there was no hiding it. To her surprise, Ino stepped closer and gently placed a hand on Naruko's cheek. So, you'll never forget this moment either? Naruko met her eyes and shook her head. No. I couldn't, even if I tried. Ino smiled. Good. She leaned forward and gave Naruko a quick, friendly kiss on the cheek. Naruko touched the spot lightly, her eyes widening with wonder. The simple warmth of that moment stayed with her, bright and comforting. She remembered Sakura's gentle touch earlier too, and it made her smile. Wanting to hold on to that feeling, Naruko stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Ino in a hug. After a brief pause, Ino hugged her back just as warmly. Naruko relaxed, smiling as she realized how much a small gesture of kindness could mean. Sakura watched them with a soft expression. She felt a tiny tug of jealousy at first, but it quickly faded. Seeing Naruko so happy mattered more. It was clear that Naruko treasured moments like these deeply. Ino, too, could tell this was important to Naruko. She hugged her a little tighter, feeling a mix of happiness and something thoughtful she couldn't quite name. It was a quiet, meaningful moment between friends. They might have stayed like that longer if not for a polite voice behind them. Ahem. All three turned to see Kakashi and Sasuke standing nearby. Are we interrupting something? Kakashi asked with a hint of amusement. Naruko stepped back, still smiling. Not really, she said, though she looked a little reluctant to let go. Ino folded her arms playfully. Well, this looks like team business, so I'll head out. But you both better come visit the shop sometime. She added cheerfully before heading off. The team watched her go before Kakashi spoke again. I'm sure you're wondering why I called you here. Then just tell us, Sakura replied, crossing her arms. Kakashi chuckled. Fair enough. I have an opportunity for you. He handed them each a form. As they read, their expressions lit up with excitement. Yes, Naruko exclaimed, unable to contain herself. I take it you're interested? Kakashi asked. Even Sasuke nodded. I am. Sakura looked up, surprised but happy. You really think we're ready? Kakashi gave a calm nod. You've shown great teamwork. That's what matters most. You support each other, and that will help you grow stronger together. The three of them beamed with pride. Kakashi smiled. We have a few weeks to prepare. I'll make sure you're ready. Naruko tilted her head. Sensei. Why do I feel like you're leaving something out? Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. Well, it won't be easy. But I believe in you. That reassurance settled their nerves. Just then, a familiar voice called out. Looks like I arrived at the right time. Naruko turned quickly, her face lighting up. Zabuza. And Haku. Haku smiled gently. We said we would visit, didn't we? Zabuza crossed his arms. We're here to help with training for a while. Naruko's eyes sparkled with excitement. Really? Kakashi nodded. You'll be learning new skills. It'll be a good experience. Naruko grinned, full of energy and curiosity. She didn't know exactly what the training would bring, but she felt ready to learn. As the group stood together, there was a shared sense of anticipation. New lessons, new memories, and new moments awaited them, and Naruko knew she would treasure every single one. 2 weeks passed by like a soft breeze for Sakura. She absorbed Kurenai's lessons with ease, surprising even her teacher with how naturally she understood the art of gentle illusions. With her new skills ready, Sakura made her way to the training ground to reunite with Team 7. She had missed them more than she expected, especially Naruko, whose cheerful spirit always brightened her days. As Sakura approached, she scanned the area until she spotted a familiar figure near a tree. A deep red cloak draped over slender shoulders, and pale blonde hair shimmered softly in the light. Naruko. Sakura called, waving brightly. Naruko turned and gave a small wave in return. Oh. Sakura, she said quietly as she stepped closer. Sakura paused. Naruko looked different. She seemed taller, her hair longer and lighter than before. Her red cloak hung loosely around her, and a high collar covered part of her face. When Naruko gently pulled it down, she offered a faint smile. It's nice to see you again, she said, her voice softer than usual. Something felt distant. Soon, Kakashi and Sasuke arrived, and training began. At one point, Kakashi spoke with Naruko privately. Sakura couldn't hear much, only catching a quiet remark from Kakashi as he walked away, "It's for you to tell." After that, Naruko remained reserved. She spoke only when needed, and even then, her words were brief. As soon as training ended each day, she would quietly excuse herself and leave. Still, the team worked beautifully together. They moved in harmony, almost as if they could sense each other's thoughts. Sasuke had grown stronger and more focused, Sakura's illusions were nearly impossible to detect, and Naruko had changed the most. She moved silently, almost gliding instead of walking. Her movements were smooth and graceful, and she handled her training tools with calm precision. Yet she never removed the large object hidden beneath her cloak. Sakura couldn't ignore the feeling growing in her heart. She missed Naruko's laughter, her energy, her warmth. So one evening, Sakura found herself standing outside Naruko's apartment. She knocked gently. After a moment, the door opened. Naruko stood there, still wrapped in her cloak. "Oh. Hello, Sakura," she said softly. "Do you need something?" "I was hoping I could come in and talk," Sakura replied. Naruko hesitated. "I'm not sure." "Please." "Naruko," Sakura said gently. Naruko paused, then stepped aside. "All right." Sakura entered, and stopped in surprise. The room was neat and filled with chalkboards covered in complex diagrams and equations. Papers were stacked carefully, each filled with detailed notes. "Naruko. What is all this?" Sakura asked, amazed. Naruko glanced at the boards. "Just ideas. Thoughts I've been working through." "It looks really complicated," Sakura said, stepping closer. Naruko nodded slightly. "I've been thinking about how things work. How energy forms and changes. But don't worry, I'm not planning to try anything risky." Sakura turned back to her. "You've changed a lot." Naruko looked down, her fingers tightening slightly around the edge of her cloak. "I wanted to talk to you," Sakura continued softly. "You feel so far away lately." "I'm sorry," Naruko said. "I don't mean to be." "Then tell me what's going on," Sakura said, stepping closer. "We're teammates. You don't have to carry everything alone." Naruko hesitated, then slowly lifted her gaze. For the first time in days, she met Sakura's eyes. There was worry there. And something else, uncertainty. "I want to tell you," Naruko said quietly. "I really do. But I need a little more time." Sakura studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. I'll wait." Naruko gave a small, grateful smile. "But don't take too long," Sakura added gently. "I miss you." Naruko's smile grew just a little brighter. I miss you too. And in that quiet moment, something warm returned between them, a promise that no matter how much things changed, their bond would remain strong. Sakura left Naruko's home just as quickly as she had arrived. She knew she would see her again soon, the Chunin exams were only a day away, and Naruko always had a way of showing up when it mattered most. For now, Sakura pushed her worries aside. There was still so much to prepare. After practicing a few genjutsu exercises, Sakura decided she needed a little break. As always, she chose to take a walk. Strolling through the village of Konoha brought her a sense of calm. She loved admiring the rooftops, the patterns of the streets, and the cheerful rhythm of people going about their day. Sometimes she could spend hours wandering like this, but not today. She wanted to return home early and be well rested for the big day. As she made her way back from the shopping district, a loud voice suddenly echoed nearby. "Let me go." Sakura quickly turned the corner and saw Konohamaru, the Hokage's grandson, being held by a strangely dressed ninja. "You need to learn some manners," the ninja said. "That's enough," said a young woman with sandy blonde hair, holding a large fan. "We were told not to cause trouble." "I'm not going to do anything serious," the boy replied. "Hey, let him go," Sakura said firmly as she stepped forward. She gently but confidently freed Konohamaru. "Go on," she told him. "Thank you," he said, hurrying away. Sakura turned back toward the visitors. The moment felt tense, but before anything else could happen, a soft breeze swept through the street. "Actually," came a familiar voice, calm but firm, "you've already caused enough trouble." Sakura looked up and saw Naruko standing nearby. Her bright hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her expression, though serious, carried a quiet warmth. "Naruko?" Sakura said, surprised. Naruko stepped closer. "Sakura, can you do something for me?" "What is it?" "Please close your eyes for a moment," Naruko said gently. Sakura hesitated. "Why?" Naruko gave a small, reassuring smile. "Just trust me. Count to 10, and everything will be alright." Though confused, Sakura nodded and closed her eyes. As she counted, she could hear voices, some surprised, some uncertain, but there was no fear in them, only a shift in tone, as if the tension in the air was slowly fading. When Sakura reached 1 and opened her eyes again, the scene had changed. Naruko stood calmly in front of her, her cloak settling softly in the breeze. The visiting ninja looked startled but unharmed, while the girl with the fan watched Naruko with wide eyes. "Let this be a lesson," Naruko said, her voice steady but not unkind. "In Konoha, we treat others with respect." The visitors exchanged glances. The boy scratched his head awkwardly, while the girl gave a small nod. "We understand," she said. Just then, a quiet presence made itself known. A red-haired boy stepped forward, his expression serious but thoughtful. He looked at Naruko for a long moment. "What is your name?" he asked. Naruko met his gaze without hesitation. "I'm Uzumaki Naruko," she said. "And you?" The boy paused before answering, as if considering something deeply. "My name is Gaara." For a brief moment, the two simply looked at one another. There was no anger, only curiosity, and perhaps the beginning of understanding. Sakura watched quietly, feeling something shift in the air. The encounter that had begun with tension now ended with calm, and maybe even the smallest spark of connection. As the visitors prepared to leave, Sakura turned to Naruko with a smile. "You always show up at the right time," she said. Naruko grinned, her bright energy returning. "That's just who I am." And as the village returned to its usual peaceful rhythm, Sakura felt ready for whatever the next day would bring. Gaara paused at the edge of the path, whispering softly to herself, "Naruto Uzumaki. I look forward to meeting you again." With that, she slipped away in a swirl of sand, as gentle as a breeze. As the last grain settled, Naruko let out a small chuckle. "What a weirdo," she said, scratching the back of her head with an easy smile. Sakura Haruno blinked, shaking off her surprise, and lightly tapped Naruko on the head. "Hey! Don't say things like that." "Hey, Sakura-chan, why'd you do that?" Naruko asked, rubbing her head with an exaggerated pout. "Because you deserved it," Sakura replied, though her voice softened at the end. She tried to stay serious, but a small smile tugged at her lips. It had been a while since she had seen Naruko laugh like that, and she hadn't realized how much she missed it. Before she could second-guess herself, Sakura stepped forward and wrapped Naruko in a warm hug. She was careful, but her arms held firm with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Naruko blinked in surprise for a moment, then gently returned the hug, her smile growing brighter. Anytime, she said warmly. Dear YouTube family. That's all for now. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Regards. Six Path Weeb.